So first, let's just talk a little bit about your reaction, especially guilty for all three of those charges. Were you surprised by anything? Just give us your input.
Well, anyone who saw that video was horrified by it. And anyone's mind who saw that video should have been that it was clear Derek Chauvin was guilty. He had George Floyd on the ground. He was handcuffed. He was not armed. There was absolutely no reason for him to have his knee on his neck. George Floyd became unconscious. The other officer said he's unconscious. He still kept it on his neck. He was clearly in distress, and he did nothing to alleviate that. So this was, in my view, really a seminal moment in American policing, because we all saw that. We saw that it was clearly abusive. And police officers are not very frequently convicted of murder. And so it was very rare. And so I think that is something going forward. Also, the chief of police in Minneapolis testified against Derek Chauvin. And I think a lot of this goes on chiefs of police in terms of their hiring and their policies and the culture they're setting in their departments in terms of how their officers approach policing. Are they approaching policing as being warriors, or are they approaching it as being guardians? They really should be guardians to protect and serve the public rather than doing battle.
Pat, talk about the sentencing phase that's upcoming. How does that work? Guilty on three different charges. Will they run concurrently, or how will that work?
Well, it is up to the judge, but it does. I think most people are expecting that they will be concurrent sentences. So he is facing up to 40 years rather than potentially 75 years if all three charges were stacked on each other consecutively. So it looks like he's facing up to 40 years, but it could also be more than 40 because the prosecutors have indicated their intention to seek enhancements to the sentences based on the aggravating factors, such as that Derek Chauvin showed a clear indifference to George Floyd when he was in his custody. He did nothing to take care of him, to help him. There was a minor, a 9-year-old little girl was present at a murder. That can be an enhancement, as well as looking at Derek Chauvin's record as a police officer and his, if there are prior complaints about his behavior and overzealousness, shall we say, in previous episodes. So there could be enhancements. It could be beyond 40 years. It is going to be up to the judge.
And of course, we've heard the word tossed around about an appeal. Do you think anything like that, will happen? What's your stance or opinion on that?
I'm fairly certain that Derek Chauvin and his attorney will appeal. It's unlikely to prevail. 90% of appeals in these types of cases are denied. The appeal goes to the Minnesota Court of Appeals because this does not involve first-degree premeditated murder. The grounds for an appeal would be something like tainted evidence, bias by the jury. Of course, there was issues about whether or not the jury should have been sequestered during the arguments during trial. They were sequestered during their deliberation, but they had a media available to them during the trial. Were they influenced by that unduly? That could be an argument on appeal. But again, most legal experts expect that the appeal will not prevail.